See, I didn't have to worry about it because I didn't have anything when I got married. Do you have to have that conversation with your client? Okay, you want to pay me to do a prenup? You're broke. You have nothing to protect.
Right.
We cannot protect things that are acquired during the marriage, and you have nothing to protect on your own, so you really don't need a prenup.
Right. Well, you can protect some things that are acquired during the marriage. So if someone has a new business, they started it before the marriage, so it'll be separate property. But what about the fruits and revenues of that business? What about other growth and where they put the funds from that business? All can be very tangled, some very specific laws that have changed in the last 15 years on some of that as things go forward. So even if they are broke, they'll do it. Some people protect the other side from debt, coming in with $200,000 of doctor student loans. Are we going to pay that off during the community? Do they have a reimbursement claim for those kind of things? A lot of questions that can come up.
That's a good, for sure. Yeah. So technically, you are broke because you're $200,000 in debt. So we don't want to bring that and make that a marital obligation.
Correct. And it would be a separate property obligation because it's done before. But then there's all these little factors. If you were going to school while you were married and the other spouse is working 2 jobs to let you go, sometimes that minimizes the reimbursement claim. Sometimes other things come into play. And the thing is, community property can be something that's so specific where you look at case law, individual instances that match closely to your facts and apply it that way. On the other hand, some things are very broad. When you pay a $120,000 down payment on a house, that's going to be the community house with separate funds. Law's pretty clear. You only get half of that back.
Yeah.
And some people understand that beforehand. Some people don't. And they come in with either the wrong expectations. They were given wrong advice, or unreasonable expectations because they think they have it.
Well, we had a whole class on community property in law school, and it was a whole section of the bar. Right. And not an easy section, no. Especially when it comes to Louisiana law and all the presumptions in this. But since we're diving into community property law, I just want to give just a basic understanding of what community property is. That's what applies in Louisiana. I know there's several other states that apply community property law too. But it's basically like things that you own before the marriage are considered separate property. Things that you acquire during the marriage are usually considered or presumed to be community property.
Correct.
And the reason why that's important is that once you get a divorce, the things that are community property are going to be pretty much split, for lack of a better term. Right. So if you bought property before the marriage and then you build a house on it, it might still be considered separate property. Right. Correct. But if you get married on January 1st and you buy a tract of land on January 2nd, and then you build a home on January 30th, that's considered community property, even though you made all the money before you got married. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's several rules and exceptions and all that stuff, but just know that community property is a big deal.
It's a big deal, and
and you should have an attorney that's pretty well versed,
right? That knows and can explain it to you. It's
someone better than me. All right, don't call me about your community property questions. Call Wes.
No, and it's a lot, and it's more money, more problems, and every case is unique. So often we see one side of the family, parents give them the lot behind there. Okay, so like you said, the lot is theirs, but then the spouse adds in on the mortgage. So the mortgage is there. Well, the house is tied to the land. So before you know it, that other spouse has the house. Clearly, the spouse who joined in the mortgage doesn't have ownership of the house, doesn't have ownership of the land, has a claim to the principal payments only made during the community.
Oh, not even the interest.
Not the interest. So if you're in year 3 and the interest is 95% of the payment, you're out of luck. Now, if you've been in that house 27 years, you have a big old reimbursement claim because the payments are flipped. It's 95% towards the principal, not towards the
Wes,
interest.
is that why some banks make, in that situation, and this is prominent in Louisiana, especially where I'm from, out in the country in Cecilia, where you have family tracts of land. Is that why banks make you donate a small portion of the separate property to a spouse before they agree to a loan so that they can tie up 2 people on it?
Sometimes the banks do that, but ultimately it's kind of up to the closing attorney. I don't see that many donations like you just described for the most part. What I do see is a clear statement in a deed that these parties are married. However, party Y is using their separate funds to pay for this house, initiating a reimbursement claim. Sometimes there's a separate document that's not filed, signed, where the other party acknowledges. Sometimes the party acknowledges on there. You see it done all kind of different ways, varying levels of cleanliness for, title purposes and community property purposes. But, they're typically not talking to a divorce attorney, a family law attorney when they're doing that. So how well versed is that closing attorney at the time? Or has one side of the family gone through it and they know some of the details, what to do? It's experience is a big part of it too.
Okay, a guy gets married to his wife. He works for a company for 15 years. He contributes to the 401k or the retirement. They decide to get a divorce. Is that money in the retirement subject to community property?
Absolutely. So any retirement funds, any penny made, this is kind of how I describe it. When you get married, the first day after that marriage, half of every penny you make is your spouse, including what you put into retirement. The thing with retirement, it can get confusing because a lot of times people have retirement before marriage. So then you kind of have two streams. You have a stream of separate community or separate property in the quadra, the 401k, whatever you want to call it, there building up during the marriage. Then you have another stream of community funds with community gains. But absolutely, retirement accounts of all times, pensions, 401ks, Roth IRAs, the whole 9 yards, SEP, all available.
Bro, I don't know if we're encouraging anybody to get married right now. Marriage has consequences. There are good ones and there are bad ones.
Marriage absolutely has consequences big time under the law. That's why I try not to refer to myself as a divorce attorney. It was so prominent in the 70s and the 80s when divorce law was really ramping up. It was a lot of animosity. Divorce, divorce, divorce. Now, to be honest with you, probably a third of my cases are unmarried couples. So what issues do I have with that? Custody and child support. But like you said, consequences of marriage, talking about divorce now, talking about spousal support, interim and final, and the big ticket, community property. And some people's community property is relatively straightforward. Okay, everything they bought, everything they had was during the marriage. A house, retirement account for dad, at a 401k and an oil and gas company. Mom was a teacher. She has, school teachers retirement, things like that.
There's some offset there.
Yeah, there's some offset there, absolutely. Normally, people that have a fair amount of assets, it could be relatively easy because you're moving pieces around.
Yeah.
If I get another attorney and there's 15 other attorneys in town, I know when I get this case, if they're on the other side, we'll be able to settle the community property because the facts are there. Clear, straightforward. Even if we can't settle it all, we're only going to litigate an issue or two. Saves money for the client, saves stress for me and the client. Happy client, they tell other people about.
That's why you're such a good referral. That's why I like sending people to you because I know that you sit down and you're very honest with your client and say, look, this is going to cost a lot of money, right? And this could get really ugly, but let's try to work and play nice on some of these deals. If we have to get ugly, we will get ugly because that's where it's going, but that's not the best route. No. I don't need to make a ton of money on your case. I want you happy because I want you to send me people in the future.
Correct. Right. I'd rather have 10 $5,000 cases with happy people, less stress going out the door, than one $50,000 case.
Right. It's 10 closed cases.
Right. 10